Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of eCommerce Mastery. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with a gentleman who has over 8 years of brand development, marketing strategy, supply chain management, global logistics, e-commerce, influencer marketing experience, and a whole bunch of other things all packed into one. All of that experience over 8 years at such a young age. And this person has also worked with clients like Jack in the Box, Coca-Cola, Universal Music Group, Adidas, and Fashion Nova, in addition to building a very, very extensive client list with also a bunch of brands that you've also founded. So without any further ado, Jason Wong, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for the intro. That's probably the most insightful intro I've ever gotten.
Well, seriously, what you've done in such a short time is truly impressive. And we were talking a little bit before the show. The thing that really stood out to me is how memorable all the things that you do are in all the brands. So based on that, we decided that we were going to talk today about how to really build a memorable brand. So we're going to dive into some fundamentals. We packed 5 of them into this episode today that you're really going to love. But before that, Jason, I would love to really hear your story and understand how you got to where you are today.
Right. I, from the very, very beginning, I immigrated here when I was 8 years old. And, like everyone else, it was always like, where's my American dream? Like, I'm here in the US now. What do I do now? But I was 8 years old, so it's kind of too early to think about it. But it was always like in the back of my mind. It's like thinking about what's my purpose here and what can I bring from my experience and my background, even as an 8-year-old, from watching my family members doing business and whatnot. What can I do for myself? So I started selling candies in school, just like every other entrepreneur you'll ever meet. They've always sold candy in school. And then that transitioned into selling sunglasses and shoes in school. And eventually I was selling adding like iPads back in high school when they just came out. I was just peddling them. And it was just kind of a fun process to do all these commerce in person because you really learn a lot when you sell in person. And then I discovered the internet and I started doing the same thing on the internet and starting my own store, my second store, so on and so forth. And then kind of get to where we're at right now. So it was kind of like an uphill battle of what can I sell to make money to, buy cool stuff for myself.
That's awesome. So, but how did you really go from starting and opening stores? Like you're selling in school, you started opening stores. Now you've worked with Coca-Cola, Jack in the Box. Like you have a pretty big empire that you're building. Like, well, take us through that journey there.
Yeah, absolutely. So around the time I was doing all the candy selling in school, I also had a pretty large online profile. My background was being a creator on a microblogging platform called Tumblr, which was kind of like Instagram before Instagram was really Instagram. And there I pioneered the idea of meme marketing. So trying to sell products or sell services or ideas through memes. Um, and there I accumulated about 32 million followers, which for a 16-year-old, it's a lot of people. You can
That's a
basically
lot
start,
of people.
yeah, you can start a religion with 32 million people. And thankfully I didn't do that. I just learned how to sell. I learned how to speak the language of the audience, and I learned how to craft the offer to something that they can consume. But most importantly, I was able to make ads that doesn't look like ads. And doing so attracted a lot of attention from other brands that wanted to do the same. Because at the time I was kind of doing these type of marketing strategies for my own brands. And so it attracted the attention of other retailers and other brands, CPG brands, or even the legacy brands that you mentioned before that want to do something similar. Because one of the things that they noticed was that ads don't really convert well. And the best things that convert are things that kind of speak to the audience like they're having a conversation or like they're consuming a regular piece of content. So the thesis was, can we package a standard product into a piece of content where it still communicate the main marketing message to the consumer without it looking like a commercial or without it looking like a direct ad. And so that was kind of the thing that I was working on for many, many years, and doing the same thing for some of the partners that you mentioned previously.
That is incredible. So did you realize, or did you plan rather, or have this idea in your mind, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, I'm going to start my own business, I'm going to build this massive following and figure out all these different marketing strategies and psychological principles? Like, was that a plan, or did it just kind of happen?
No, never. It was never on the whiteboard. I've never noted down in the journal, never told anyone I was doing it. It just kind of happened. But one of the things that I would say is share across a lot of entrepreneurs, that we take opportunities and we get to it really fast. So my entire academic career was going through a path to become a doctor, just like every other Asian kid you'll see. It's like, oh, either lawyer, doctor, or teacher. And I chose being a doctor because one day I Google what profession makes the most money. I actually did Google it. Well, at the time it was Yahoo. Back in the day, I used Yahoo. And, coming from a family without a lot of money, your main idea was like, how can I provide for my family? So, like a regular 13-year-old, I asked Google or Yahoo, what job makes the most money? And I saw, oh, doctors make pretty good money. Let me go be a doctor. So I just studied my entire life to become a doctor. And I believe it was a couple of years before I actually had to take the SAT, I dabble in e-commerce through my social media profile, because at that point you can sell anything. And I realized that I actually really like doing e-commerce, and I feel like there's a broader appeal to people, and I can actually make a bigger impact. And not in like saving people, but like the things I do can reach a global audience compared to a local hospital. And then I also asked myself, well, why do I really become a doctor? Do I want to do it because I'm genuinely passionate about being a doctor, or do I just do it because I want to provide financial stability to my family? And the answer was the latter. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, can I do the same thing if I started my own business? And the answer was maybe, because no one really knows for sure. So it just took that maybe and just went with it. Started one store, second store, third store, just kind of snowballed from there.
That is incredible. And I love the decision making of, you were on this one path, but this other path, just through your own efforts, I mean, you really constructed your own additional pathway here. And then you're identifying, okay, well, what do I really care about? And it seems like you almost let your guiding values and what you were trying to do guide you towards the best possible path.
Right. I think one things that I've always been doing is asking myself why. Why do I want to do this thing? And do I have a logical reason to do it? Is it because of my emotion, or is there a logical reason why I want to do it? And so it's just keep asking myself why every time I try to make a major decision. And if the counter argument is better than what I was doing, then I just go with the counter argument, because obviously I know enough and I argue with myself enough to know that the second option might be the better option. But more so than that, I always had like this goal to provide financial stability to my family, because we grew up not very well off, and we immigrate to a new country. So like my first job, like my first idea wasn't about chasing passion. It was more about like, can I get a job to provide for my family? And it just so happened that I was able to do both at the same time. And my passion in selling and commerce was able to provide, an income for myself and for my family. And so it kind of worked out.
That is inspirational, man. Thank you for sharing that. So before we dive into the fundamentals, I'm so curious, what's the long term for you? Like, where do you see yourself going in the grand scheme now?
I kind of see my 20s as building, and my 30s as maintaining and sustaining, and then my 40s in advising and helping people grow. My idea is that I want to build a framework that's repeatable, and that I want to help other people that just doesn't have the same resources that I do. Because I know that 8 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people teaching you how to do e-commerce. There weren't even podcasts about how to do e-commerce. I wish I had all these stuff back then. So which is why I'm so keen to do these podcasts and provide these insights, because I just wish I had that when I was younger. So I think in my 20s, I'm just trying to get my companies acquired in the next few years, and then spent the latter years advising other people how to do the same.
That's incredible. Incredible. So now that we know where you've come from and what you're doing and where you're going, let's break down these fundamentals.
Cool.
The first one we were talking about was, number one, treat your customers like friends.
Sorry. Yes. So I think one of the things that really differentiate one brand from the other is the way that they communicate to their customers. And oftentimes there's this barrier between a brand and their consumer, because the consumers keep seeing them as a brand. And when you think of the word brand, it feels like there's a gigantic wall between you guys. It feels like you have to walk into a store to be consumed into a brand, or you have to go onto the website to enter a brand. So it's kind of overwhelming, right? So what we did a lot for our brand was trying to break down the barrier by communicating with our customers in different channels, and communicating them in a way where it doesn't feel like we're only trying to sell to them, but rather we're trying to be there to guide with them, and we're kind of like partners in crime. You need skincare tips, we got skincare tips for you. If, for example, if I'm selling skincare products, right? And then, we also provide the same type of support through our text message system, our email system, where we don't really email you like a customer. We kind of email you like I've known you since 5th grade. And, that type of language is spread across all our channels. And in a sense, people feel really comfortable with us. And when they feel comfortable with us, they just keep remembering us because we're more like a friend to them rather than a brand.
So how do you actually go about crafting this messaging? I guess if you're going to the point of crafting it, it might be like trying so hard that it doesn't sound real, but like how do you go about doing it in a way that's authentic enough for them to actually feel comfortable with you?
The key here is always provide more than what people ask for, and always going above and beyond what people expect. And that same principle is guided across our customer support system, our SMS. Especially for SMS, we do wellness checks for a customer. Like we text our customers, how are you doing? Like, are you okay during this pandemic? Make sure you drink water. Like, I don't see any other brand doing stuff like that. And just doing like these little gestures, not because we're trying to sell them anything, it's because we want to make sure that our customers are actually well taken care of, because we know that the lifetime value of a customer is a lot larger than what their initial purchase was. So if we're able to nurture these relationships, they will actually come back and return to our store in tenfold. So just trying to identify what's our touch points with our customers, whether it is through our email flows, our SMS flows, our customer support system, and trying to see if we're able to build a type of language that really makes us stand out, and then trying to use the same language again and again, and so that it instills into our consumers' head that we are a different brand and that we're actually more of a friend than a brand.
When you're going about, I guess I'm trying to find the right word, but it's almost like you're uncovering the right language to use with them. Like, is that based on research? Are you picking up the phone and calling them? Are you reading their reviews? Like, how are you actually entrenching yourself in that language?
We hire people that are within our target audience. That's really key. Our entire team is under 25. I think our CMO is 29, but they're still really much in the scene and understanding the language, understanding the trends, the cultural taboos, what words not to use, being very much into the cultural movements. We are big supporters of the movements recently, and we've donated to that too. So people see us as more of an ally, because that's really like who we are. Like we do it, and then we want to show people that we support their visions too, rather than just trying to sell them products. So for example, in June, we donated 2 days of sales to Black Lives Matter movement. And we want to make sure that, people feel supported and people feel that their voices are heard. So we use our platform to amplify their messaging. Our logo is still Black right now because we want to stand in support of these people. So just making sure that we are actually doing what we preach through our actions, through our activism, and that people feel like we're actually their friend who are supporting them and supporting their vision. And I think those are two key takeaways of what really makes us connect to our customers.
So would you say that you're more uh, like you're more a student of culture more than anything? Like you just really understand the culture and what people are thinking and like the memes and the
Yeah.
inside jokes and all that?
Yeah, you have to be in the trenches, man. You cannot be in the headquarters thinking that, this word's cool when it's not. And I'm not trying to say that you need to try really hard to do it, but you just have to live in it. It's kind of a hard word, but you have to be in the crowd. You have to understand their pain points. What are they desperate and struggling with, and trying to really empathize with them. And all of that will be reflected in the way that you do your marketing and the way that you outreach to your customers.
That makes so much sense. Awesome. So, okay, we dug into and drilled down into number one, which is treat customers like friends. Number two, our second fundamental here is have elements of your brand that stand out.
Yeah. So when you think of the way that people interact with your brand, there's the initial ad that brings them in, there's the website that brings them in, and then if they do purchase, they get the package in their hand and they see the actual packaging, and then they see the actual product. So like making sure that we are able to provide a unified experience across all these touch points, and making sure that when people think of a very specific color, they think of us. Like for doe lashes, our brand colors blue and pastel pink, like a very, very specific Pantone color. So when people see that and anywhere else, they just think of us. So having design elements that stands out is really important. And the reason why I chose that is because when we're entering this market, the false eyelash market, we knew that our competitors were all these gigantic brands with huge support behind them. But one thing that I noticed is that they all kind of look the same. They have a lot of European and Western style of design elements. And I want to bring something different. So I went to South Korea and I found the design firm that made dipping dots, the ice cream dots.
Yeah.
The same design firm that designed that brand element or brand guy, I hired them to design dough. So they brought in very cute elements that when you think of a font, when you think of a color, or even when you think of like the small patterns on our packaging, you immediately think of dough. And so just trying to find these things to plaster across your website, your email flow, the way that you send graphics, the banners that you put on Instagram, and making sure that all these design elements are unified so that when people see you in different touch points, they know it's you and they keep you in the top of their head.
So it seems like you're basically orchestrating from beginning to end a journey for them where every single time they come in contact with you, you're basically saying the same thing in a little bit different way.
Yes. So e-commerce is tricky because there's the lack of consumer physical touch point. When you walk into Lush, you smell Lush. You see the people greet you in their aprons and they're like, hey, how can we help you? And they all kind of talk the same. Same thing with Disneyland. When you walk into Disneyland, you feel like you're in a different world. And so like in e-commerce, the big problem that we're trying to solve is like, how can we convey the same type of feeling and experience to our consumer? And the way to do that is by having a unified brand experience through every single touch point. And I think that's something that some people do not realize, because they're like, oh, you know what, emails separate, SMS separate, websites all the way up here, whatever, right? If we use the same brand color, that's really it. But then they have like two different copywriters for an email, a different copywriter for their product description, and it just doesn't really talk to each other. So our job was trying to make sure that the experience from A to Z, and even if they don't purchase from us, even the abandoned cart email, or even like the SMS that we sent them, speaks the same language, so that if they do come back, they would know that I should come back to Dough.
So when you're putting all of this together, how how difficult is it to automate this? Like, because I'm trying to think from the perspective of our listeners and watchers here. They're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I have to make sure all these things are in a row, all my ducks are lined up. How difficult is it to really get this set up and then to automate it to where it happens every time for every customer?
Not that difficult to set up. Really, what we do is we build a brand guide. So the brand guide is essentially a PDF, maybe like 8, 9 pages. It'll tell you what the brand colors are, the exact color codes, what kind of patterns to use. So, for example, Adidas is the 3 stripes or their font. Sometimes their shirt will only have their Adidas font. Sometimes it will only be 3 stripes. But then they could play around with the 3 stripes, like 3 stripes with different colors. So, like finding like a specific pattern that you can use for your brand, they can use across different channels is very important. And then we talk about like what's our brand language, what are the specific color and fonts, what are the message that we're trying to convey to your customer, and all that compiled in a single brand guide. And every time we work on every time we work on a specific channel like SMS or email or website or our banners, we follow the same brand guide. So everything that we make is derived from the same principles. And in terms of like how to automate that, automation can happen differently for different platforms. So for Klaviyo, our flows are all using the same design elements. We have templates that we use across our emails. For our graphics and for our Instagram, we just follow the same brand guide, but you can't really automate Instagram. Once you automate it, people can kind of tell that it's automated. So for things like that, we actually have a designer who works very, very hard to make sure that these things are crafted the way that it needs to be. But automations for SMS and automations for all the follow-up emails, those can be automated pretty easily through the specific channels.
So it seems like besides the social posting piece, which that's a whole other conversation for a different day.
Yeah.
But it seems like the really hard work is done on the front end when you're building out your brand guide. And I
Mm-hmm.
love the word principles of really instilling the values, the principles of this brand. Like, what does it mean? What are the colors? What are the fonts? What are the
Mm-hmm.
symbols that we can then replicate everywhere? And it seems like it's taking that, and then for each different thing you need, like for your website, for your emails, for your SMS, for your copy, for your so on and so forth, you can just refer back to that, and then you're good to go because you're sticking all within that one guide that you built in the beginning.
Yeah, the work is really in the beginning to build that unified voice for your brand, and every single person that you work with, whether it is a contractor or an in-house employee, just follow the same brand guide. That's really the secret, or not so secret, but not a lot of people I know really follow that.
So then when it comes to, and I probably should have asked this before, but better late than never. But when you're speaking with customers, are you using some sort of persona like the Geico Gecko, or you literally have a person who's the face of the company, or is it just kind of a brand? Like how do you make those decisions and go about that?
This is actually the funny part. For all the emails that we sent, it sent the from person is Amy from Dell. That's the name, Amy from Dell. It's kind of like Flo from Progressive. And then for all the SMS, we have a person for it there too. So we always like to have a person name that we use, so that when people talk to us, they feel like they're talking to a person. They're not talking to the email that Dolash sent. They're talking to an email that Amy sent. And instead of like using fancy graphics, sometimes we just send plain text email. And like everyone that does email marketing is like, bro, are you serious? I spent so much money designing my emails, yada, yada, yada. But no, plain text email convert the best for us because it is so authentic. It seems like the email that you sent to me asking me how my day's going. You're not gonna put fancy graphics into it. It feels straight to the point, right? But here's the kicker. Amy is the name of my girlfriend. She's actually not involved in the brand at all, but I just felt like it's easier to sell when it says Amy from Dell rather than Jason from Dell. So I had to borrow her name for a lot of her emails.
That's awesome. And I love, again, it seems like consistency. Every single email is coming from the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the go-to for email and then for text and so on and so forth. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Okay, perfect. So we talked about fundamental number 2, which is to have elements of your brand that stand out. Let's move on to fundamental number 3, which is become omnichannel and be everywhere at once.
Right. One thing that we did differently for Dough is that we test on every single channel and then we assess after a month. So we try Pinterest, we try Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Google, Google paid ads, email, SMS. We even tried postcards. We sent postcards to people who abandoned their cart. And then we basically try to get to our customer in every single touch point. And when we find that that channel is very successful, we keep them. So now we market to people in 7 or 8 different channels. So we're almost always there. So when you visit our website and then you go on Snapchat, you'll see our ad on Snapchat. You go on Instagram, you'll see our ad on Instagram. Just being everywhere at once just always keeps your brand top of mind. It's probably not like the most comfortable strategy for a lot of people because they don't want to be annoying. But for a brand as young as ours, you really have to be a little bit more aggressive in the beginning because you're fighting against thousands of other brands that are for the same attention of one individual user. So like, Coca-Cola doesn't really have to do these stuff anymore because they're a legacy brand. Everyone knows Coca-Cola because they've seen it so many times in commercials, football stadiums, banners, billboards, and people don't realize that. But these brands were doing the same thing that we were doing many, many years ago. What we're really trying to do is replicate the same success that they have, and it's really basic human psychology that if you're able to be omnichannel and everywhere at once, it's a lot easier for people to recall you from their short-term memory. So when they see your brand so many times and then, maybe they saw your brand for the past 7 days and today they realize that they need to buy eyelashes, they'll remember your brand first before anyone else. So it's just kind of like that's our strategy for being everywhere.
So I feel like there are probably some people thinking, wait a second, I've heard from other marketers that I should focus on one traffic source with one offer and just get really good at that. So how do you make sure that you're being like, how do you make sure you're excellent on all of the platforms all at once?
Yeah, I've definitely heard that argument too, and there's merits to it. And we are doing that same thing, but multiplied by 7. And I'll explain to you why. So let's just say that you have one really amazing Facebook marketer who's bringing you, let's just say $100,000 a month in revenue. Um, who's to say that I cannot keep doing the same thing and also add in an amazing Snapchat marketer who's bringing in an additional $50,000 a month? It doesn't really dilute the efforts that the Facebook marketer is doing because we're doing Snapchat now. So why are we trying to limit ourselves to trying additional channels? The other argument that I have is when you depend too much on one channel, if that channel fails, you really don't have a backup. So for example, because we diversify our acquisition efforts across so many different channels, when Facebook is doing poorly for us, we were actually still offsetting the loss from there by doing better on Snapchat and Google. And the third thing is because our team is so big, we actually are able to hire one person per platform. So we have a dedicated person for Facebook, a dedicated person for SEO, a dedicated person for Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. So one person per platform. So that goes back to my initial arguments. Like, yeah, a lot of people will do one person, one platform, do it really well. But what's stopping me from doing that times 7 because I hire 7 different person who's doing at 100% capacity on each of these platforms. And that's really how we scale so fast.
That's awesome. So it seems like you're really performing the role of captain of the ship where you're putting in the work on the front end to think of the idea and to build out the infrastructure of the brand. And then you're installing different experts into the different seats that they need to be able to lift off as quickly as possible, to go with the seat and rocket ship analogy.
Yeah, when people talk about finance, they're always about diversifying your portfolio because if one stock does bad, at least you'll have like other portfolios to bring up. And I follow the same principle when I hire for growth. So I tell a lot of people this and they think I'm crazy, but I really have one person per platform. And they're so laser focused on how to optimize and grow that platform that they don't have to worry about anything else. Whereas a lot of other companies, they have one person doing Facebook, email, Snapchat, and email or SEO or SEM. And they're not doing these platforms at 100% efficiency. They're not. I know that because I'm currently consulting for Universal Music Group. I know how their marketing strategies are working, and I instill these same principles for them. And we just saw a gigantic lift because one person realistically cannot multitask on 5 different acquisition channels efficiently. So what if I just bring in one person to do 100% efficiency for one platform? and multiply by 5%, so it's a little crazy idea, but I tried and true for my own brands.
So going back to some of the previous fundamentals, how do you make sure that you're still portraying or projecting or living rather a consistent unified brand voice amongst those 7 channels?
Really goes back to the brand guy. When we first onboard anyone that works with us, we have sessions where we go through how you're supposed to represent the brand in a specific channel that you're doing. And obviously there's going to be some tweaks in terms of like the between Google and Snapchat and Twitter. For Twitter, if you look at our Twitter at Doe Lashes, we're just posting memes. Like we don't even promote stuff. Like if you scroll down our Twitter feed, you're not really gonna find us promoting anything. We're literally like we're talking about trends, we're talking culture, we're like talking smack. Like it feels like you're following your best friend. And if you look at our engagement, just so many people responding and engaging with our content, because we're not trying to sell them anything. We're trying to convey the messaging of the brand that we're fun, we're bubbly, and that we can also just be someone that you can talk to every single day. And then you go on to like our email, which is kind of the same language. Like if you see as Amy from Doe and just joke about it, we send them dog pictures. We like sometimes we just send emails saying, hey, what's up? Like there's not even a button to buy stuff. So, but obviously the language will be tweaked a little bit, but not much. But the same principles of the brand still aligns across all these channels. So to answer your question, it's just about training your team to make sure that when they represent your brand across the channels that they manage, they're using the same principle that all the other team members are using.
That's brilliant. All right, so we've talked about 3 so far. Let's keep it going. Let's move on to fundamental number 4, which is to stay in touch with your customers constantly.
When we say constantly, we're not like, hey, text them like every single day at 4 p.m. There's really no schedule to it.
That's the girlfriend brand. We don't want to be that.
Yeah, it's pretty casual. When we say casual, we really mean it. We text our customers just like how we text our friends. Sometimes we'll send out broadcasts on SMS asking them if they drink water. We only get 160 characters in an SMS text, so just ask them, hey, have you drink water today? And we get so many people responding back, and then they ask us, have we drink water yet? How's the team doing? And then we ask them about like how they're doing during the quarantine. It's just like literally just talking and keeping in touch with it, making sure that they know that we're here for them genuinely. One of the best investment I've made was into our customer support team. We call them the customer happiness team, because that's really what we do. We try to do everything that we can to make sure that they are happy, even if they're not buying stuff from us. Within our SMS contact list, I would say 40% of them have never purchased from us in the past 60, 90 days. They just signed up with their phone number and they're in our list. But regardless, we still treat them the same as our VIP customers who have spent $800 with us already. So just making sure that we are always top of mind. We convey the message that we are there for them with or without money from them, because we're a brand that really values long-term relationships.
That is brilliant. So it seems like we want to keep the conversation going, and not by sending out messages like, hey, buy this, buy this, buy this, but actually engaging in genuine human conversation.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of what our text looks like. So like I'll say last Thursday, we sent a text saying, hey, like, have you drink water today? Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's the temperature is getting really hot, stuff like that, because it's getting really hot. And they're like, oh, you're a real person. You're not a robot texting me. And then when we do run a promo, we're like, hey, just want to let you know that there's a promo today. That's it. There's like if I were like, if I was like a close friend of yours and I saw a really cool deal, I'd be like, hey, Ben, like you need to go to Foot Locker right now. They're doing like 50% off sales. That's how I'll text you. That's how we text our customers. It's not like, hey, Ben, just like, Doe Lashes is having 50% off today. Enter this code right now. Offer expires in 24 hours. Like we don't text like that. Usually, like maybe like for Black Friday, once in a while we have to do that to be a little bit more straightforward with our offer. But like for the most part, we just like, hey Ben, like something new dropped today. It just dropped. We just had a new release, And they're like, okay, cool. Like, I'll go check it out. Like, they actually text us that. So when you see that there's a very casual conversation with a customer, it doesn't feel like we're trying to sell them something. It feels like we're just reminding them, like, hey, dude, like, we got something new coming out. If you want to check it out, works every time.
That's awesome. It really feels like it's bringing it down to a more human level, and it seems like it's bringing it down to like a young people level, talking
Yeah.
to like young people talking to other young people. That is brilliant.
Yeah, you know, I actually got inspired for that from observing how people at high-end malls operate. So if you shop at high-end retailers, like for example, if you're buying a very, very expensive watch, you usually have someone that you text. Like if you buy at Rolex, you'll be on their phone number list, and then your salesperson will have your number. And they're like, "Hey Ben, the new Submariner just came out. Like if you want to come check it out." And I was like, that's a pretty brilliant idea. Like you actually make them feel like they're talking to you and you're selling something to them without them being in store. I wonder if I can do that for e-commerce. So just bringing the same principle of making people feel loved, making people feel like they're actually getting attention, because every single brand sends text like, hey, Ben, 24 hours left until this offer expires. Every single brand texts them like that. Every single brand sends emails like that. And people are just ignoring them now, you know? So if you're able to just break down that barrier between the brand and consumer and really talk to them respectfully, they will come back to your brand.
That's awesome. All right, let's move on to fundamental number 5, which
Mm-hmm.
is to have an excellent product.
You know, one of the things that I thought of when I first started, I was like, you know what? I can do really good marketing. I can honestly sell anything, even if it's just like a box of poop. And then I saw Cards Against Humanity actually selling a box of poop. I was like, damn, that's a great idea. I actually think that marketing will rule everything. And as I get a little bit older, I realized that yes, you can sell a person, something really in the beginning, but they might not come back for a second or third purchase. And that's really where the money happens. Once you start really getting into the finances of your company, you realize that most DTC companies really make money off the second and third purchase. So the effort now goes into customer retention rather than like customer acquisition. Like obviously acquisition still really matters, but what makes people come back is if they really like your product. So we put so much effort into making sure that our products are good enough that even if we don't market to them a second time, they'll actually still come back because they like our product so much. Think of like the body wash that you use, the conditioner that you use. You're probably using the same brand for the past few years because it's a good product and you like the way that it makes you feel, even if you haven't seen a commercial for it in the past few years. So I kind of shifted my focus from marketing to product in the past few years as in terms of like my personal principle. So like, yes, we still do really good marketing, but we still at the end of the day want to create a product that people will enjoy and love, and they'll come back even if they haven't seen an ad from you. And that coupled with really good marketing strategy is really what leads to growth. So you have a bucket of people who come back to you because they saw your ad, and you have a bucket of people that come back to you because they really like your product, and you combine the two together. You can kind of see like the exponential growth from there because the two bucket of people are retention and new acquisition. That's really what drives up the positive slope, right? So that's kind of like my fifth guiding principle is like I really have to make sure that the product that I make is worthwhile for someone to come back after I get them in the door at the first time.
Jason, I really cannot thank you enough for all the wisdom that you've shared and these fundamental principles that you've really broken down for us, as well as the story that you've told us. And I just want to thank you tremendously for that, and to everybody who's watching and listening. Um, Jason basically just gave you the principles that you can use to slay it and absolutely crush it in your own e-commerce business. If you're not jumping for joy and like taking notes furiously, and if you haven't been this whole episode, you need to listen to it again and write it all down and implement it, because these principles could absolutely change the course of your business's path and the course of your very own life, because these are powerful, powerful, powerful. So Jason, thank you, man. Seriously.
Yeah, appreciate it. And like one last thing to leave off is when I like to teach, I teach principles rather than specific strategies, because my belief is that every single brand and every single person will find success through different methods. There's really no right or wrong way to run Facebook ads. There's really no right or wrong way to grow your company, but there are principles that are shared across every single successful company that if you follow it and use your own experience and your own understanding of your audience, you'll be able to create your own strategies that are unique to your own brand. So I stopped teaching strategies because I realized that what works for me may not work for another person. Because just the different demographic, the different language that we use. So I like to shift my focus now. It's like these are the guiding principles that if you do follow, I believe that it will make tremendous difference to your business.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a really fascinating approach. So again, I want to thank you so much,
Mm-hmm.
Jason, and seriously express my appreciation for you. Thank you very much. And to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to thank you all. Jason, if people want to get a little bit more, they want to take the next step, learn more about you, where can they go? What can they do?
I post a lot of stuff on my Twitter at Agro, and then I don't post any business stuff on my Instagram at Pug. So take your pick on who you want to see. I don't have an email list. I don't have anything to sell. I just tweet, stuff that I learned and I feel like it's valuable. I have a thread on Twitter called "Go Buckets of E-commerce Tip." That's pinned on the top of my profile. That you'll see all the different strategies and tips that I have personally learned from my own brand that you could take inspirations from. You don't have to follow it exactly, but it's just some things that I found.
Amazing. And I'm going to go ahead and put those links on video in the description below, podcast in the show notes. Jason, thank you. Everybody watching, listening, thank you. And I will see you on the next episode. Take care now.